I'm the Public Works Director and Town Engineer for the Town of Paradise. We're so grateful that you are joining us today, either live or watching this recorded video for the Transportation Master Plan. We are calling it our Roadmap for Infrastructure Recovery. Tonight is our fourth meeting of a summer series that we've been doing on various topics. Earlier, I believe we started in May or June with a general infrastructure recovery update. Then we had an evacuation summary or evacuation workshop, design standards a couple of weeks ago, and tonight our focus is bicycling and walking and having a kind of a comprehensive network review in response to the opportunity ahead of us in rebuilding Paradise. So thank you so much for joining us. I'm joined by Paul Martin with Mark Thomas. He will be facilitating the presentation this evening, and I think I'll turn it over to Paul now, and we'll have some more housekeeping items on the remainder of the presentation. Thank you so much.
Great. Thanks, Mark. And again, I'm Paul Martin. I work at a company called Mark Thomas. We're helping the town with the Transportation Master Plan. I'm also going to lead the presentation focused on bicycling and walking. So hopefully everyone can see the screen, see the presentation. I'm going to walk through a mixture of different slides. We have people joining us online as well as a few people here in the room at the Town Council chamber. All right. So again, tonight our meeting is being recorded. So yes, I didn't set that up on Teams, but the meeting is being recorded and will be posted to the town website so people can view it later after the fact at their leisure and on their schedule. Anyone that's joining us online, your camera and microphone are turned off upon entry. There is an opportunity for questions. Anyone participating digitally online, there is a raise hand feature. We have a graphic that better explains that, so we'll go through that. And then for anyone in person here in the room, we have the podium you can approach and be able to speak, and we'll have you on recording as well as participants, so then everyone can hear whatever comments or questions. And again, all this will be recorded and posted to the town website. On the recovery page, we have a dedicated section for the Transportation Master Plan. Tonight, we're focusing on the topics related to bicycling and walking within the community and how that relates to daily needs as well as emergency response needs and evacuation events. So I'm going to go through a good amount of slides, and we're going to talk about network improvements or infrastructure improvements on how we can potentially map out ideas for improving the network to walk and bicycle within the community. And also talk about something we use the term non-infrastructure efforts. So different things like education or enforcement activities. And then how this relates, of course, with the town. We're creating a planning document, and the idea is to be able to map out what are the ideas and the solutions that the community likes the best, and how much do those cost, and how can we get funding for that. So positioning the town and the community to really succeed in going after grant funding opportunities and being able to address those needs financially using funding from different sources. It could be the region, it could be the state of California, it could be federal, and so on. And then we'll talk about next steps and so on. And again, we do have a forum to participate and provide input. And then it builds, tonight's presentation is a lot of content, and then we're asking everyone that's participating or watching this viewing to fill out a survey that is being posted online as well. And the survey would then ask you to weigh in. Which things do you like the most? What are your priorities? Okay. That survey will be open, we're tentatively saying, until September 2nd to try and get the community input, very similar to the surveys for the prior workshops, available for a few. All right, so we want to start with the long-term recovery plan. Following the campfire, there was a lot of work with the community about this road to recovery. So there's things like the town's general plan, the long-term recovery plan, and this schedule of long-term, near-term improvements and long-term improvements on rebuilding the community. So the long-term recovery plan did have a dedicated topic where they focused and recommended on constructing an interconnected system of Class 1 paths throughout the community, and that it serves dual purpose needs.
Paul, I'm going to take a chance and interrupt just to make sure the audio is really good for those watching online and the recorded version. So why don't you move your laptop over to my spot?
Okay.
We'll switch seats.
Got
Thank
it.
you.
Got it. I think maybe this microphone has better sound. So do we, how does that sound? Do we have some way to figure it out, I guess? Yeah. We'll look for some of our team that's participating online to give us a heads up if that works. Okay. All right. So then I'll make sure to use good posture and try and make sure to speak up loud enough. So our team can let us know if I need to speak up more. As a reminder, the long-term recovery plan, what we were talking about was the long-term recovery plan following the campfire did have a recommendation for an interconnected system of Class 1 paths within the town of Paradise. So Class 1 is a term of art that we use. It's really an off-street trail, very similar to the Yellowstone Kelly Heritage Trail that goes north-south through the town of Paradise. So there's a really solid backbone network within the community, and we're looking to really identify where can we expand on that. This graphic shows, for example, a Class 1 or an off-street trail that would be multiple use for bicyclists and pedestrians on the top to be able to travel in that space that's fully separated from car traffic. A travel lane or roadway to the side, and then some sort of buffer distance between them. And the image on the top is kind of the daily needs within the community. The public can participate. They can use that off-street trail however they need to or want to. Could be for recreation purposes. It could be to get to school or work or to go to the store for picking up something quick. And then the image on the bottom is the idea that we get this dual function opportunity of essentially a path or a roadway that could be used by emergency responders during some sort of evacuation or emergency response. So as long as we think about this proactively and we build that network of off-street paths to be able to accommodate larger vehicles and emergency responders, then you get that dual functionality. So this helps the community for the daily needs as well as emergency needs, and it really opens up the opportunities for us to pursue grant funding programs as well to address multiple buckets, not just bicycling and walking opportunities, but also all the emergency response and proactive resiliency building within the community. So I want to touch base on the existing network for bicycling first, and we have these different categories shown with different colors on the map. So the image on the left shows the town of Paradise, generally within the community, and this thicker dark blue line showing the Yellowstone Kelly Heritage Trail. And that is that off-street trail within the community. There's also colors for on-street bike lanes, such as on Pearson Road. So that's called out as a Class 2 bikeway. There's a few spread throughout the community. And then there's also a third category, a Class 3 shared route. I have a couple images in the following pages that I'll highlight as well. A shared route essentially is a space where both bicyclists and motorists are sharing the same space. That a bicyclist might be riding on the roadway directly in front of a motorist or behind. Usually you would find that in just very specific locations, maybe short stretches, and roadways that are lower speed, essentially, and lower volume, typically. So here we have some images to really help understand what do those look like. The community is probably familiar enough with the Yellowstone Kelly Heritage Trail shown on the left. And on the right, we see the striped on-street bikeway along Pearson. This page shows the Class 3 or shared route scenario. And this is actually on Pearson as well as you approach Black Olive. And this stencil on the ground that's shown in the image on the left shows the bikeway with the two chevrons or arrows. And that really is a reminder that it's a shared use space. So this exists for a short segment on Pearson, as well as Black Olive, and some other locations within the town. And within the industry, we do even have a fourth category that is called a separated bikeway. So the image on the bottom right shows two cyclists on this separated bikeway that have a physical barrier, a raised median or some sort of barrier in between the moving vehicle traffic and the space that serves bicyclists. So that's a class 4 separated bikeway for the just kind of education for anyone watching this. Getting back to the existing network, we've also mapped out where the existing sidewalks are throughout the community. And do note there are some gaps in continuity along certain roadways. And some questions about the quality. You see this naturally with the older community or older infrastructure, just areas for improvement. So we've tried to map out where those are. And then really through tonight's discussion and the survey, we'd like the public to really tell us where would you like improvements, whether it's the bicycling or the sidewalk network. Here are a couple of images just showing the sidewalks, for example, on Skyway or near the post office, and then the image on the right, in some cases where there's some shade structure on those older sidewalks or within the community. So then when we bring those two maps together, you see the existing network that serves bicycling and walking within the community. So there's a mixture of colors there, and everyone has the chance with the viewing to go ahead and watch this again and pause on this and be able to take a look at it to see if they have any questions or thoughts about that. Now, we'd like to highlight where current projects are underway. The town has already secured some funding to implement some projects, and you might have seen the construction underway. For example, on Almond Street in the downtown area, there are improvements underway that are adding sidewalks, bike lanes, an off-street trail along Almond, north of Fur as well. All these improvements are underway. That was secured through grants that the town was able to secure before the campfire. And the design was completed and then is under construction for completion this year. Another key project for everyone to be aware of, if you have been on Pence Road near Paradise Ridge Elementary School, Pence Road improvements. So here, Pence Road is being improved, as well as an off-street trail directly adjacent to elementary school. The image on the bottom right shows the construction as of today. So I took that photo today to just see the progress. So that can be an access all the way between Wagstaff and Billy to be able to get to the elementary school. So community members can be able to ride to and from the school, off-street, next to the Pence Road car traffic. So this is a good example, again, of building that space where people can walk on bicycle and have that full separation from car traffic. All right, so those were the two key things for under construction. So you see we're layering between the existing network, projects under construction, and then we've worked with the town to come up with a preliminary recommended network for additional bikeway improvements. So on the screen now, we have the image that shows where those existing facilities are with solid lines, and then there's dashed lines showing some additional ideas for improvements. Now, this is a pretty lengthy list and pretty comprehensive within the town. I would say this would be transformative if all of this was implemented within the town, but we recognize there's some costs and construction that would come with all this, and we really want the public to weigh in on what would be your top priority? What would you like to see done first? And are we missing something in particular? So, for example, on the far right, you see Pence. There's a solid line near the school. We're showing that as existing because it's under construction and nearly complete. But then what happens on Pence north of Wagstaff or south of Billy? So this is a longer list. The graphic at this point just shows the whole network. I know it's a bit busy. What we wanted to do was then walk through each of those improvements. So on this page, you see the Billy Road path, and it's highlighted in yellow, traveling east-west from the park on the west all the way to Pence on the east. The idea is, could we propose and implement an off-street trail on the north side, about a 3-mile length? And then what we've done is we've listed different connections and destinations. So this would provide access to the transit stops with bus routes 40 and 41. It would provide that linkage to the Yellowstone Kelly Heritage Trail and the park, and various uses throughout the community. Things like medical and commercial uses, the post office, some religious institutions as well. The cost is not small. We've identified a preliminary cost estimate of $18 million to implement. Now, the idea is that we're trying to map out what all these things might look like and try and come up with the dollar amounts the best we can. That number, of course, can refine over time. And a primary goal for the town would be to go after grants to be able to address that financial need. So I've gone through this one in particular in a lot of detail. There's more as well. For example, the Clark North-South path. I'm not totally going to read through every land use for each one. And this, again, is an opportunity where if someone's viewing this after the fact, you can pause on different slides and be able to think about what are those destinations? What's important to you within the community? Would the Clark North-South path on the west side be helpful to be able to go to key destinations that you would like to access? Or along Elliott, an east-west connection. Again, on this one, it's proposed on the north side. This would go by the Terry Ash Recreation Center and the high school, and then continue to Sawmill. Now, what's not shown on this map is in parallel with the Transportation Master Plan, we are talking and considering different roadway extensions. So, for example, Elliott Road, extending that to the east between Sawmill and Pence. The alignment isn't figured out exactly where that would go, but then the community has been asked to weigh in on that potential roadway extension. Generally, we would expect any or most of the roadway extensions that would be constructed or new roadways within the community, they would have sidewalk improvements and potentially an extension of a off-street trail like this one shown or proposed on Elliott. Flip to the next one. Neil Path, traveling south from Skyway to the southern edge of the town or beyond. This one just identifies a 1.6 mile route, so really within the town of Paradise along Neil Road, and be able to have that access again for residences and community members trying to access Skyway and get to those various destinations. Oliver Path is identified here, and we show it snaking up to Wagstaff. It would cross then something along Billy and provide better access to be able to get generally from Skyway to that west side, to the park and the residences and other uses along there. We've identified Pence. I've talked about that a bit. Trying to have Pence all the way from Skyway down to the south. We do show the railroad extension that's been a discussion point within the community. And workshop number 2, we talked a lot about the railroad extension and asked the public to weigh in on which roadway improvements or extensions were prioritized. If the railroad extension occurred, then we'd really like to be able to see this path continue south of Pearson all the way to Pence. There's definitely a lot of items to work out about the costs and the design, any right-of-way, those types of things. But this is a visionary document. We really want to think about how can we transform access within the community. And then Pearson, east of Clark, is shown here, where there's an opportunity to try and provide that connection to Pence and connect with those on-street bike lanes that are along Pearson west of Clark Road. I mentioned railroad. We do want to highlight the graphics at this point. We've done our best to try and provide some sort of alignment, but keep in mind it's very graphical at this point. There's a lot of community input that would need to happen with railroad to really refine that and figure out what that alignment of that roadway looks like and further engagement with the community about understanding that project. So certainly if railroad happens with the project, we would propose some sort of path as well. And then Sawmill, north-south, providing connectivity from Billy down to Pearson. This graphic shows Skyway, south, potentially all the way to the city of Chico. So the costs are not totally identified here because this goes outside of the town. It would take some energy to really think about all the way down and what do you connect to, and what's the best connection to get down to Chico and close to the 99. But the idea to provide some sort of connectivity, and this would be a nice linkage between the town and Downridge. And then we've changed our image here. This one in particular is something that came up within the group where we realized if there was something along Oliver, it'd be nice to have a connection between Oliver and the Yellowstone Kelly Heritage Trail around the Terry Ash Recreation Center. Again, the alignment is very graphical. We're not totally sure where that exactly works out. So there's a few different concepts shown on the screen in yellow highlight there. Some of that is definitely subject to further refinement. But if we think about it at a high level, it'd be nice to have that east-west connection for students maybe going towards the high school or anyone that's just trying to connect east-west and cross Skyway. And then Valley View to the west, serving the residences and the community out in that area. We wanted to consider if that was a priority, if the community feels that that would be a good connection as well. I think I'm almost done with the Wagstaff. We're going alphabetical, so almost there. So Wagstaff here, this kind of links up with the Oliver connection as well. Okay, so yes, Wagstaff was our last one on the bikeways. Now I'm shifting gears to the pedestrian network. So definitely what's shown on the page is some initial concepts of improvements for walking along Skyway and providing sidewalk improvements. So in the darker image, darker red on the image here, we would propose improvements with sidewalks. And then I mentioned sidewalks would be included in new or extended roadways as well. So those various things, whether it's Railroad or Elliott Road extension or other roadway connections, that with going after grant funding, typically that's just going to be included and would be planned within the community. All right, so then summarizing that, what we want the public to weigh in on the survey is where should new sidewalks be prioritized? Where should bikeways be prioritized? Where do improvements need to happen? Are there specific places within the community where the sidewalk maybe is a bit narrow or the pavement quality is not in the best of condition and we'd like to see that improved? So this image, this slide is just kind of a reminder again that we want everyone to weigh in on that survey, provide your input. And to be able to say, where do those off-street bikeways and paths, where would those be most valued within the community? And I've talked about it as serving bikeways, but as a reminder, this off-street class 1, this off-street trail would serve both people walking as well as bicycling. So if I'm going to go walk the dog or just walk with a friend, that the off-street trail would be built wide enough and be able to accommodate people walking and cycling, just like the Yellowstone Kelly Heritage Trail today. And that survey really says, what are your top priorities? What are your top 3? What would you like to see done? And that way it really helps the town and our team to be able to say, these are the things that rank the best. And when going after grant funding, it's always very important for us to be able to say, we presented this list of ideas. It's visionary and it might be pretty deep, but the community told us which things we should start with and focus on first. And I've mentioned a lot about lining up with grant funding opportunities. There are some immediate grant funding opportunities that the town is already focused on. So we're working a lot with the town right now for the Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery category. And that is specifically eligible for the town of Paradise and Butte County from the fires, from the 2018 fire. There's only a few counties throughout the state that are eligible to get some of that disaster recovery grant funding. So we're working with the town, and that's where a lot of these cost estimates came from, to be able to try and pursue some funding. And then next year, there's funding from the state of California called the Active Transportation Program. So we use that term active transportation broadly to handle cycling and walking. It would also include people on some sort of rolling devices. It could be a mobility assistance device. Or it could also be a skateboard or kids riding a scooter. That the active transportation program can help fund these things, like these off-street trails or the sidewalks throughout the community. So effectively a year from now is an opportunity for the town to pursue funding for that. And the public engagement and feedback from the community is very important for that grant program. So the more input we get, the better. Those are two big ones, but there's additional funding opportunities as well. So other disaster recovery type funding opportunities, federal programs, or other state funding programs. If I gave a list of different grant opportunities, it would be a long table, and frankly, kind of too deep into the weeds, I think, for most of the community. The takeaway really is for you to understand that there's a lot of funding opportunities. We're working with the town to really be able to spotlight what are the best opportunities that are best suited for the town of Paradise. All right, so I also want to transition now away from the network and talk about amenities in particular. So it is important to think about when you're cycling within the community, when you get to your destination, how can you lock up your bike and where does that go? So if the public has some sort of input and ideas about where bike racks would be desired, you might already see some bike racks within the community. Sometimes they might be older racks that don't totally work well for your bike. The image on the left is called the inverted U rack. It's very functional. It's not the most attractive, but it's very functional and supportive of people being able to lock their bicycle up. I know with my son, I was just going over with him just yesterday about locking up both the front tire and the back, the rest of the bike when he goes to school. The inverted U rack really is well suited for that circumstance, for example. So where does the community want to see more bike parking, essentially? And then the image on the right is more of a secure locker. So you might have a longer term need to lock up a bicycle. Imagine maybe the transit center or transit location, or if you're going to a place and you were going to be there for hours and you didn't want the bicycle out to be subject to the inclement weather, that some sort of secured locker could be provided. It might be really focused locations within the community, but we'd like any input if there's locations that are desired. And then while walking within the community, are there key locations where additional seating or lighting are desired, or shade structures? You do see some of these treatments on the Yellowstone Kelly. There's good precedence within the town about trying to provide these amenities that you get a mixture of different needs and community members, and being able to take a break and sit, for example, is always appreciated. All right, early on I did mention that there's not only infrastructure, but non-infrastructure. So it's a bit of a term of art, but the idea is, where are there opportunities to improve the culture and the support for walking and bicycling within your community related to these different topics: education, encouragement, enforcement, evaluation. And I'll explain and provide some examples of what these types of things are. Now, we have these all pointing towards the ATP goals. So the big funding program that I've talked about is the statewide active transportation program. And the program really wants to see infrastructure projects, but they also ask for other improvements and strategies. So things like traffic safety programs. So fitting within the education category, you see an image here of essentially taking over a basketball court and the local police being able to go through safe bicycling behaviors by youth and doing that training regimen with students and kids in the community. I know when being a Cub Master and working with kids in this field, that elementary age students really look up to someone in a uniform. So sometimes having police officers involved and providing that guidance could go a long way. It could be refined based on the age level, but the idea is to try and have this multidisciplinary engagement and education within the community. So I'm going to go through some of these different strategies. And again, on the survey, we would ask the public, what do you think is best suited for the town of Paradise? What do you want to see, and what would you like to see more of? So there's other things like printed collateral that could be distributed with the local schools, tips on safe bicycling. Maybe this is a backpack filler, what's the term? Take home. Friday folders is what it was for our kids. Every Friday that kids would come home with an envelope full of things. So, flyers, or this could be something that's just directly with students in the classroom, getting some sort of education and the printed material as well. Imagine this is a printed version. Imagine a coloring book that provides similar information as well. We mentioned the education with local police. There could be dedicated safety events. So this image, you see the person dressed up like a giant bear with a bike helmet. So this was a safety event where we teamed with a local police department and invited students from 3 different elementary schools to come out with their families. And then through this program, they were able to give out bicycle helmets. And then Oso the bear, I think Oscar El Oso was branded the bear here in this image. I really wish that was me in the bear outfit, but I gotta find my way to that. Anyways, he was part of it, and providing that messaging with youth and really leading a little bike ride and providing that safety tips to the students. All right, and then I've talked a lot about school safety and some sort of engagement directly at the schools. I know I have a slide later. I know that the town, as part of the Pence Road improvements, the town also has some funding to be able to do some engagement directly with the students at Paradise Ridge. So that may be very similar to this. Maybe on the screen here you see some sort of raffle opportunity for students to be engaged. Maybe it's a checklist. You go through these 4 things and you get a raffle ticket, and maybe someone could win a bicycle or some sort of specific thing, right? All right, that was education. Encouragement is a key topic as well. We don't want to miss this. So in a lot of communities in October, there's a walk to school day event. So a dedicated event, and this could be both parents and youth, and role modeling is a really nice way for us to teach our youth going forward about opportunities to really think about how you travel. So the note here on the left mentions, Paradise Ridge Elementary School does have funding, and they're going to work with Butte County Health Department to go ahead and host some events in the upcoming year. These events are always a lot of fun. Everyone's always super pumped, and it's just so pleasant to participate in these. Dedicated training for students as part of education could be things like a bike rodeo. So the image here shows mock car and students riding around, and an adult guider, an adult would be guiding them about, paying attention to the stop sign, looking before crossing, those types of messages, riding with the direction of traffic, those types of things. So this could be specific to bicycling. It could also be related to walking specifically. And you realize, well, as a parent, we all download this information with our kids, but it might be nice to make sure that everyone gets coverage through some sort of rodeo event. And a lot of communities, like this image from Flagstaff, they do host events in the month of May. That is a dedicated bike month. So there could be, all month, there could be dedicated events encouraging people to dust off that bike and fill up the tires and get out and ride a little bit. Or it could be a week, it could be a day. Every community scales it based on their abilities, but having some sort of dedicated event and encouragement. communities have been able to get funding from the state to go ahead and host specific cycling classes. I know this may sound unusual on its face, but I realize a lot of our community, they stopped learning about bicycle riding once they learned how to balance, right? Once the parents got them to be able to ride and they could handle the stopping and starting and they could balance the bike. But in reality, there are additional skills on how to handle the bicycle, whether you're young or old, on being able to stop the bike as quick as possible, to really understand how to maintain it, how to change that flat tire, right? It stresses people out, but frankly, it's not that hard. But, you know, it's just that thing. If you haven't had a friend or someone to be able to guide you, then it can seem intimidating. So there's opportunities to get funding and host this type of education and encouragement within the community. And we talk a lot about going after grants and some of these improvements, like the project on Pence Road. Throw a party, right? This is a nice way for us to really celebrate the success of the community and opportunities and part of the recovery throughout. So maybe hosting grand opening events and really making sure there's a splash so everyone knows about certain improvements. So Pence Road is coming up, even the downtown improvements along Almond and other streets as well. And then the local police have an opportunity through enforcement to be able to have a presence and build rapport with the community at large. So there could be dedicated enforcement around school zones. It likely already happens here in town, but opportunities to also go after grant funding to supplement current funding for the local police to be able to provide enforcement. I know, you know, with school starting, the school started here yesterday, so with all that activity again at schools, it's a good opportunity for the local police, for the sheriffs to be out there and have a presence and kind of that reminder for everyone, hey, school's back in session, you know, let's be cautious around youth. There could be dedicated enforcement on areas where there is a crash history, where we have some sort of documented history of crashes within the community to have a specific enforcement by police officers. So in some communities, for example, they'll have police officers cross a roadway, like in a crosswalk, and police officers are doing it. And if a motorist doesn't yield to the pedestrian in the crosswalk, then a motorcycle officer can follow up and either issue a warning or a citation to the motorist. So some sort of targeted and focused enforcement. There's also an opportunity, we hear a lot about traffic school. Some people have gone to that instead of, I don't know if it happens anymore, getting a corner cut off your driver's ID. But the idea that traffic school is available instead of, if you get a citation, that there's a similar opportunity for traffic school related to cycling and incorporating that into the training. That could be something that really is just handled by the sheriffs, and maybe it's in Chico, or maybe it appeals to or serves the county as well as Chico and Paradise all at once. So there's some opportunities for that. So a specific state law that does allow that diversion, instead of paying some sort of ticket, that you can go to the class and learn about both motor traffic safety as well as cycling safety tips. And then on the evaluation, so this is a new E. We don't want to miss this. I have an engineering background. I really want to think about what's the most effective solution and how well are we achieving our goals. So an opportunity within the community is to work with the local schools and evaluate how many of the youth walk and bicycle to the school every year. It could be things like students providing the stickers, or a take-home flyer that they fill out, or simple raising of hands. How did you get to school today? That could be done on an annual basis to be able to track progress. You could also take a look at bike racks, for example, at the high school or the middle school or the junior high, and see how many people are cycling to the community. So this would be relevant, certainly, when you think about before-after improvements. When we think about the improvements along Paradise Ridge, if we tried to provide some sort of tally, how many kids are walking to school today, and then how about a year from now, once all of that improvement along Pence Road is complete, hopefully we'd see some improvement, and then we can use that in those grant funding programs to be able to say, look, we have more activity. Some communities have even tracked cycling activity and walking activity. The image on the right is an off-street trail. The little diagonal markings on the asphalt there is a passive detection system that just tracks the metal in the bicycle passing by. So you could build in something along the Yellowstone Kelly or other off-street trails, for example, and be able to say, we know how many people are walking and bicycling along this trail every single day. So that could be done within the community if there's interest to be able to track that and then use that for those grant pursuits in the future. All right, so that was my long-winded discussion on network and non-infrastructure. We want to highlight everyone, we would like you to fill out our survey. So the link is provided here, but it's also on the town website. As a reminder, under the recovery page, there's a dedicated link for the transportation master plan. And this provides a more simplified web address that someone could type in if they wanted as well. And I know that the team here at the town is going to be promoting the survey through Facebook and other media as well, and get the word out for that. So you can look for those. Currently, we're planning that the survey would be open for about 3 weeks, so that gets us to September 2nd. And the bottom of the page, this is the web page for the recovery page on the town website as well. Okay, so now I went through all this, but we wanted to open it up if anyone would like to comment or speak up here in the room, as well as anyone online. I'm not able to keep tabs on how many people are participating online, but this image shows if someone's participating online, there's an image where you can do reactions. You can click or hover on that, and then there's a few different things. So we're suggesting if you want to speak up and you're online, you click on the raised hand feature, and it'll show that someone is interested and they'd like to join us and speak. So we can unmute people on the fly. It looks like Mark you did a little test there. Mark Maddox, here from the town, has raised his hand. So if anyone's online, they may be able to see that. The image of Mark has a little hand there now. So if anyone wants to, then that is the way to make it happen. Did I miss anything?
No, I think that's great. Thank you, Paul. Raising my hand to say great job on the presentation, and we're excited to move forward to the public comment section. So I'll lower my hand, and if there's anyone in the room that would like to come to the podium, we do have a camera, and we do ask that you speak into the microphone as loud as you can, and so people in the audience can hear you. So at this time, would anybody like to speak to the presentation, provide some general feedback on projects, what you'd like to see for the future of infrastructure in Paradise? And there doesn't have to be any. Yep. John, would you like to?
Sure.
All right.
Come right up.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah, I can come and speak while everyone else is still connected. I'd love to see even half of this come to pass. It's encouraging that the town of Paradise is interested in encouraging non-motorized transportation through the town. One connection that I've advocated for in the past is to connect the bike trail under Pearson. That break in the path is a significant detriment to people going up and down through town. Similarly, a connection like at Luther, not just to get to the Oliver side, but also to come from the Billy side down and then access Terry Ash from that side would be very beneficial. It's interesting that you have proposed the long way down Skyway to the valley and not addressed the connection between Town of Paradise and the Upper Ridge, that it would be good to have ways for example, Paradise intermediate and high school students who live on the Upper Ridge to come down to school and not have to deal with the horrible bottleneck across the dam, for example. I came down on the bicycle today to be well informed about the situation.
Cool.
Many of the areas where you are proposing to have bicycle routes might be prohibitive with the existing grades. For example, Elliott East-West is terrible, whereas Billy is much less of a burden. We don't know what the exact route of the railroad extension will be, but that might also have double-digit grades that would be prohibitive for bicyclists, most bicyclists anyway, and that would be a relatively low priority. My experience before the fire was that biking on the various residential streets through the town of Paradise, there was never that much conflict between bicyclists and motorized vehicles, whereas especially on Clark Road, and especially on Clark Road north of Wagstaff, there are significant conflicts. So it would be good to have, if the Clark Road improvements are cost prohibitive, to have better connectivity between commerce on Clark Road and the existing Yellowstone Kelly Trail. There are many places where bike racks would be beneficial, such as right here and at Terry Ash, and the Transit Center is especially a good location to have a bike locker because there are times when you take your bicycle intending, for example, bike across town to take the bus into Chico, and then the bike rack is full. So those locations where you would have to leave your bike possibly for the entire length of the day are the places where lockers might be beneficial, but just to have racks around town. Now, I've never had problems here in Paradise like I have in Chico or in Sacramento with things coming off of my bicycle or the bicycle disappearing entirely. But as the town repopulates, that might become an issue, and it would be nice to have ways to encourage people to use bicycles to get around. Also, it's nice to see, first of all, an emphasis on teaching motorists to be safe around non-motorists, rather than putting all the burden on bicyclists. In terms of skills, it might be beneficial to teach people how to use kick scooters on streets or use their skateboards on streets in places where sidewalks don't exist, to teach them how to use that safely as a means of transportation, because we do see that for kids going to school and things like that. I'm an active bicyclist, and I have a lot to say. I don't need to say it all while everybody else is standing here waiting. I'm looking at my notes. Another connection that would be great would be a paved way to get to Moore Road, whether that's coming down from the senior apartments or coming across on the Forest Service side. I've been through there. It depends on which bicycle you're on, whether you really want to go up Moore Road or not. A road bike does not like that road as it is. So that would be good in thinking of the places where, especially people under the age of 16 are going to want to go. Moore Road and the ball fields and the dog park, and those are destinations. And again, the town has discussed acquiring right-of-way on either of those connective streets. But if that were to happen, then having some sort of bike infrastructure there would be fantastic. And again, regarding crosswalk compliance, it has been very, very bad for somebody who rides the bicycle trail, the Yellowstone Kelly Trail up and down, that even getting the fourth or fifth car to stop is surprising. Frequently, an entire line of cars will go, and then you get to go. Clark is the worst. The east to west streets are less bad, but still, you have to assume that nobody is going to yield, even though it's their obligation to yield. The beacons might help if they were activated, but I think it's more an issue of education. And once there's more bicycle transportation through the town, then the drivers will become acclimated to it and be prepared for bicyclists as well as other vehicles. I understand the town of Paradise has had a problem. You sort of become flyover country for the people who have been displaced and are now living in Magellan, commuting to the valley, that a lot of people are just trying to go up and down as quickly as possible. And hopefully, as the town repopulates, people will be going slower and taking more care. But again, very happy to see all of this, and I have lots of ideas, and we're filling out your survey.
Wonderful.
Thank you, John. We really appreciate your comments, and I think you made some very good ones, and so we'll definitely take those into consideration. Anyone else in the room before we turn it over to online? Take a leap of faith and say if there's anyone online that'd like to raise their hand and make a comment here, we'd be glad to unmute you and hear what you have to say. No pressure.
I've made it hard for anyone to follow me.
Don't make me start calling out a couple of these people by name. I know you. Bill Mantle, Eunice, I see you. Thank you for being on the line or watching the presentation. we don't have to keep going. We're so grateful. Again, it's recorded. Watch it anytime at your leisure. I know we'll get a lot of views that way and point people to the survey. This is kind of like the context of the survey, and as we move forward into delivering kind of this final document for a vision of the town of Paradise. I'll provide a quick update maybe by then if there's no other comments. Close the workshop. We do have results of the workshop number 2 survey likely to be presented to the Town of Paradise Town Council in September. We received over 800 responses to that survey about evacuation routes. So we've got a lot of data to sort through, and looking forward to doing that and reporting back to the community and getting direction. So other than that, that's about all I have. Anything else we've missed? Yeah, thank you. I guess I'll make one last call to someone to raise their hand online or in person. All right. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for joining tonight's workshop. We look forward to hearing from you. You can always find us here at Town of Paradise Town Hall. My contact information is on the website as well for the Transportation Master Plan.
And I guess I would also add in, tonight we're presenting a lot of new information. We want the public to weigh in on the survey so that we can make refinements, and then the active transportation plan would be something that would go to town council and would be adopted by the town as a key guiding document. So there's additional opportunities for public input going forward. Please be on the lookout for that.
Great. Thank you, everybody. I hope you have a great night. Stay safe and be well.